I never thought the war would start with a handshake. It was a Tuesday morning when Austin Locke walked into my office wearing that smug, rehearsed smile. The one he saved for clients and politicians. I'd known him for over 20 years. We built this firm together. Jordan and Locke was my father's dream, and I bled for it after his death to make sure it didn't die with him. My name is Asher Jordan, and I am a lawyer. Austin was my friend, or at least I thought he was. He closed the door softly behind him and stood in front of my desk like a funeral director about to deliver bad news. I didn't like the silence in his eyes. Too polished. Too calm. Then he said it. "Asher, the board has decided we need a fresh direction. You're out." I stared at him, confused. "What the hell are you talking about?" He slid a manila folder across the desk. Inside were signatures, some familiar, some not, and a unanimous vote. I'd been voted out of my own firm. My name, was about to be scraped off the glass door like I was a janitor who'd missed too many shifts. I could barely get the words out. "You're kidding." Austin sighed like he was the victim. "It's not personal. The clients want change. You're too traditional. We need to evolve." Traditional. That was rich, coming from a man who still paid interns in pizza and exposure. I stood up slowly. "I built this firm. My father built this firm. And I made it profitable," he shot back, letting the mask slip for just a second. "Let's not pretend we did this equally." There it was. The truth. The parasite thought he was the host now. "You used me," I said. "I used your legacy. Don't take it so hard." He left with a nod and a bullshit offer of severance. As if that could replace what he took from me. By noon, HR had boxed up my office. The photos, the awards, the pens I bought when I passed the bar, gone like a bad tenant. But what they didn't know, what Austin didn't know, was that I had something better than a severance check. I had the list. Months ago, after a quiet dinner with our biggest client, tech mogul Ivan Griggs, I started noticing a pattern. The top-tier clients weren't loyal to Jordan and Locke. They were loyal to me. They liked how I worked, how I listened, how I got results without showboating in the media like Austin did. So I kept notes, conversations, promises, a quiet list of names and private numbers, just in case I ever needed to start over. Now, it was more than insurance. It was revenge. I walked out of the firm with 2 boxes and a firestorm in my chest. No press release. No send-off. Just whispers and sideways glances as the elevator doors shut. You never forget your first betrayal. Not when it's this personal. I went home to my empty loft and opened the list. 57 names. Clients who said, "If you ever leave, let me know. We'll follow you." Well, I just left. I started dialing. Starting over wasn't glamorous. There were no oak desks, no glass walls, no interns offering lattes with smug smiles. Just me, a borrowed office above a rundown deli in Midtown, and a laptop older than some of my cases. But I didn't need flash. I needed focus. The list had given me momentum. Of the 57 names, 11 returned my calls that first week. 4 agreed to meet in person. 2 signed immediately. Not because I had a fancy logo or a boardroom with views of the skyline, but because they trusted me. And trust, I've learned, is a currency more powerful than any billable hour. By the 3rd week, I had a name, Jordan Legal Advisory. Simple. Clean. Just me. I hired a part-time paralegal, Maddie. A firecracker fresh out of law school who didn't care about suits or legacy. She cared about winning. That made 2 of us. While Maddie sorted paperwork and hacked together a website, I worked the phones. The clients I knew, the ones who'd once shaken my hand after long trials, were easier to sway. But then came the harder part. The ones I didn't know were unhappy. Like Bianca Keller. She was one of the firm's biggest retainers. Tech distribution, big contracts, international patents. Under Austin's management, she'd been assigned to some junior associate with no clue how to handle IP across borders. I asked her to lunch, and what I heard nearly made me choke on my coffee. They left a key clause out of my Singapore contract, she told me. Cost me 6 figures. When I complained, Austin said, "Minor growing pains." Growing pains, Asher. I apologized, even though it wasn't my name on that mistake. But I knew then, Austin wasn't just ambitious. He was reckless. One by one, I heard similar stories. Neglected filings. Missed calls. Corners cut in ways that didn't just cost clients money. They could cost them entire cases. Some chalked it up to growing too fast. Others were less forgiving. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. Austin wasn't running a firm. He was playing a short game, maximizing profits, minimizing attention. The firm that bore my name was slowly turning into a machine for high speed, high-stakes incompetence. That night, I stayed up late going through court records and case filings. Maddie helped. We found red flags, discrepancies in billing, procedural missteps buried under piles of paperwork, arbitration decisions that should have gone to court. One file stuck out. Vasquez versus Lansing Logistics. Austin had claimed it was a quick win. Settlement closed in 6 weeks. But in the fine print, there was a forced confidentiality clause that screwed the plaintiff out of future compensation. Something no ethical lawyer should allow, unless they were chasing a quick payout and didn't expect the client to read past the bold type. I remembered Mr. Vasquez. A good man. Hardworking. Immigrant background, English as a second language. Probably trusted Austin to do right by him. It made me sick. "Do you think this is criminal?" Maddie asked, her eyes wide. I shook my head. "Not yet. But it's damn close." I knew I had a choice. I could blow the whistle, file a complaint with the state bar, leak it to the press, burn Jordan and Locke to the ground. I had enough now to at least trigger an ethics investigation. If I timed it right, I could scoop up even more clients in the fallout. Maybe even some of the board members who turned on me. But then there was the problem, my father's name. Have you subscribed to our channel yet? Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Jordan and Locke wasn't just a firm. It was a legacy. My father built it from nothing, brick by brick. His name was still there. Mine too. If it collapsed in scandal, people wouldn't just blame Austin. They'd blame the Jordans. I didn't know if I could stomach that. The easy path was to look away. Focus on my new firm. Keep growing, stay clean, let Austin hang himself eventually. But easy isn't always right. So I made a third choice. I started building a quiet case. Not for the courts, not for headlines. Just documentation. Names. Dates. Internal memos. I wasn't going to strike yet, but when I did, it would be precise. Legal. Devastating. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was war. And I wasn't losing this one. I knew Austin wouldn't stay quiet for long. The moment clients started jumping ship, I felt the ripple. Jordan and Locke wasn't just losing billables. It was bleeding credibility. And Austin, he was never one to bleed quietly. The first shot came subtly. A colleague I'd mentored for years, Sarah Jenkins, stopped returning my calls. She'd promised to send over a file for one of our shared clients, standard transition protocol. Instead, radio silence. Then I got a formal notice. Jordan and Locke was reviewing the validity of my engagement with any client I'd previously worked with at the firm. Translation: they were looking for ways to sue me. Still, I pressed forward. More clients signed on. Maddie kept the office running on caffeine and stubbornness. And then the real counterattack began. Austin started spreading rumors. Word got back to me through a court clerk I trusted. Austin was telling judges, arbitrators, and old contacts that I'd mishandled settlements, that I'd stolen proprietary firm data, that I was unhinged after being let go for emotional instability. Some of it was laughable. Most of it was malicious. And unfortunately, some of it stuck. Suddenly, I was getting cold shoulders in court. A judge I'd argued in front of for years gave me a dismissive glance when I tried to file a motion. Clerks delayed filings. Courtroom doors metaphorically, and sometimes literally, closed in my face. I tried to shrug it off. But then came the letter. The Bar Association had received a complaint questioning my ethics and fitness to practice, filed by none other than Austin Locke. It was vague. Accusations of client poaching, inappropriate use of privileged information, and undue influence. The kind of broad, shadowy language that raised red flags, but left just enough room for interpretation to get me tangled in red tape. I stared at that letter for 20 minutes. Maddie found me still holding it, unreadable expression frozen on my face. "Is it bad?" "It's not fatal," I said quietly, "but it's a knife aimed at my spine." I knew what Austin was doing. He couldn't beat me in the courtroom, so he was trying to gut me outside of it. And worst of all, it was working. The real heartbreak came next. People I'd trusted, people who'd celebrated my wins and called me friend, turned. Quietly, almost politely. Some stopped taking my calls. Others fed Austin inside information to stay on his good side. One even testified against me in the bar's preliminary hearing. Said I'd always been a bit reckless with protocol. That I had a temper. That maybe Austin was right to be cautious. I felt each word like a betrayal etched into my ribs. Still, I pressed on. Until I got the notice. My office lease was being terminated. The landlord claimed violations of building policy, though he couldn't specify which ones. Just smiled nervously and said he didn't want trouble. Jordan and Locke had represented his cousin in a messy divorce 2 years ago. Austin's shadow was everywhere. That same day, I got a panicked call from Ivan Griggs, my biggest client, the one whose loyalty had helped launch Jordan Legal in the first place. "Asher," he said, "I just got hit with a cease and desist. They're claiming our contract is invalid because you breached a non-compete clause." My blood went cold. The non-compete clause Austin referenced was buried in a stack of documents I'd never signed. Maddie and I double-checked the old firm's archives. No signature. No initials. Nothing. Just Austin trying to bluff a tech billionaire into backing down. But Ivan didn't know that. He was nervous. He had shareholders and a board. Legal gray areas weren't welcome in his world. "If this drags out," he warned, "I'll have to reassess our arrangement. I like you, Asher, but I have a company to protect." That night, I sat in the empty office, half-packed, boxes lining the walls, furniture being repossessed, and stared at the city lights through the cracked blinds. I was losing. Austin had turned everything I'd built into a liability. I was boxed in, blacklisted, under investigation, and now potentially about to lose the very client who gave me a second chance. This was my low point. I thought about walking away, about selling what was left of the practice, maybe moving out west, starting fresh under a new name. But then Maddie walked in with a flash drive in her hand. "Found something," she said, her eyes gleaming with a strange, vengeful satisfaction. "You're gonna want to see this." I looked at her. "What is it?" "Proof," she whispered. "Real proof. Of what he's been doing." Suddenly, I remembered who I was. And more importantly, who I was about to become. The flash drive Maddie handed me didn't look like much. Just a dull black stick with no label. But the moment I opened the files inside, I realized it was a bomb. One Austin had been hiding for years. Bank statements, internal memos, shell company transfers, a silent paper trail of funds flowing from Jordan and Locke into private accounts, then into ventures so volatile they might as well have been Vegas slot machines. Real estate deals in unstable regions. Crypto startups with no product. A film investment fund that hadn't released a single film. Austin wasn't just corrupt, he was reckless. He'd funneled millions from firm profits into high-risk personal projects. All under the radar. All undocumented in public ledgers. But the files on that drive? They exposed everything. Have you subscribed to our channel yet? Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. I sat in stunned silence, a sick weight forming in my chest. If those investments tanked, which, based on the numbers, they likely would, Jordan and Locke wouldn't just lose face. It would implode. Pensions, client trusts, partner bonuses, everything gone. And the fallout wouldn't just hit Austin. It would wipe out junior partners who'd given their careers to that firm. Associates with student loans. Paralegals who believed they were part of something noble. My father's name, carved into the entrance wall, would be associated with one of the biggest collapses in legal history. I stared at the screen, jaw tight, heart pounding. I could let it happen. Walk away. Let Jordan and Locke burn from the inside. Watch Austin crawl through the wreckage he created. I had enough evidence now to bury him. No lawsuits, no rumors. Just one leak to the right outlet, and his empire would turn to ash. But my father's legacy would burn with it. The Jordan name would be tied to scandal, to fraud, to failure. My father's dream wasn't just the building. It was the principle. Justice, integrity, legacy, everything Austin had defiled. I couldn't let that be the last chapter. Maddie paced behind me, chewing her nail. So what's the plan? I turned slowly, the decision settling in my bones like steel. We don't go to the press, I said. Not yet. Her brow furrowed. Why not? We've got enough to destroy him. Exactly. And that's why we're going to give him a choice. 3 days later, I stood in Austin's office. Funny how little had changed. Same leather chairs. Same skyline view. Same smug smirk on Austin's face when I walked in unannounced. You've got some nerve, he said, not even looking up from his desk. You'll be disbarred by the time I'm done with you. I tossed the flash drive onto the table. It clicked once against the wood. Louder than it should have. He finally looked up. What's this? Everything, I said. Your shadow accounts. The fake LLCs. The funds you laundered through crypto companies that don't exist anymore. You've been cooking the books, Austin. And I've got the recipe. For the first time since this war began, I saw him blink. He picked up the drive slowly, inserted it into his laptop, clicked through the files. I watched the color drain from his face, like red wine spilled across white marble. You've been spying on me? No, I said coldly. Your assistant uploaded everything to the wrong cloud. A lucky break, and a tragic mistake for you. He leaned back in his chair, trying to recover. You think this is enough to take me down? I took a step forward. Oh, I know it is. If I turn this over to the SEC, the bar, or even the Wall Street Journal, you're finished. Jordan and Locke collapses. Investors flee. Clients sue. You do time. Or worse, your reputation dies. He swallowed. Said nothing. I dropped the ultimatum. You resign, I said. Today. Quietly. You step down, transfer controlling interest in the firm to the board, and walk away. No press. No fireworks. Just fade out before the curtain drops. He stared at me. And if I don't, then I send this to every regulatory agency in the country. The silence hung heavy between us. He tried to bluff one last time. If you bring the firm down, your father's name goes with it. I know, I said. That's the only reason I'm giving you this chance. For the first time in our entire war, Austin Locke looked afraid. Not furious. Not smug. Just afraid. And I knew then I had him. Later that night, I walked back into my stripped-down office. Maddie was still at her desk, eyes bloodshot from too much coffee and too little sleep. Well, he's out, I said, announcing early retirement tomorrow. Health reasons. She let out a breath she'd been holding for days. You really did it. I sat down, finally letting myself breathe. Not yet, I said. There's still one more thing to fix. Because I hadn't just taken Austin down. Now, I had to rebuild the house he nearly burned to the ground. On my terms. Austin Locke's resignation was posted as a single paragraph on the Jordan and Locke website. Effective immediately. No farewell speech. No interviews. No tributes. Just a quiet retirement for health and family reasons. The board confirmed it within the hour. I'd made sure of that. Backdoor meetings, quiet votes, dotted lines signed before Austin could even try to spin his exit. He walked away with his tailored suits and a padded severance. More than he deserved, less than he expected. That was the deal. I wouldn't torch him publicly if he stepped down completely and disappeared from the firm's affairs. No contact with clients. No seat at the board. No shadow influence. The man who stole my firm was finally out of it. But the ruins he left behind? Those were mine to fix. Over the next few weeks, I did what no one thought I could. I merged my fledgling practice with the shell of Jordan and Locke, cut the rot, and restructured the leadership from the ground up. The new name went live on a rainy Monday morning. Jordan Law. No ampersand. No partner. No lock. Just one name restored. I reopened the downtown office with the same team I'd built from scratch. Maddie, a few junior associates who believed in what we were doing, and the core clients who'd stuck with me through the storm. We didn't come back with fanfare or champagne. We came back with purpose. And yet, walking those halls again, my father's halls, it felt surreal. His portrait still hung in the main conference room. Same quiet smile, same charcoal suit. I remembered standing beside him at age 12, watching him argue emotion like it was a symphony. I used to think he was invincible. Now I understood better. He wasn't invincible, just principled and human. The calls started coming in the second week. Old clients, quiet apologies. Some wanted to come back. Some just wanted to say they were glad I'd survived. But one name caught me off guard: Charles Templeton. Templeton and Bell was the firm's oldest client, dating back to when my father first hung up his shingle in the 80s. Charles had been like an uncle to me growing up, always sending Christmas cards, gifting books about great legal minds. When I got my license, he was the first to shake my hand. He walked into my office the following Thursday, still sharp at 75, cane in hand, suit crisp. I stood to greet him. "Mr. Templeton." He waved me off. "Still Charles, Asher. Always Charles." He lowered himself into the leather chair across from me, looked around the room, took a long breath. "Feels different," he said. "It is," I replied. "Stripped it down. No more smoke and mirrors." He nodded, slow and thoughtful. "Saw the announcement. I heard what happened, bits and pieces." I said nothing. I didn't need to explain. He smiled faintly. "I remember when your father brought Austin, Indiana. Fresh out of school. He thought he saw fire in the boy." "Yeah," I muttered. "Turns out it was just smoke." Charles chuckled. "Maybe. But he also saw you. Saw both of you. One with ambition. One with heart." He leaned forward. His tone shifted, lower, heavier. "You had every reason to walk away, Asher. Let it fall. Take your revenge and be done. But you didn't." "I couldn't," I said quietly. "It was my father's name on the door. And a lot of good people who would have paid for Austin's mistakes." He tapped his cane on the floor. "That's what makes you different. Your father, he once told me, if Asher ever takes over, I hope it's because he fought for it. Not because someone handed it to him." My throat tightened. "He'd be proud," Charles added. "Not because you saved a firm, but because you saved its soul." That night, after everyone had gone home, I walked into what used to be my father's office. Now mine. The walls were repainted. The desk was newer. But the window, his favorite window, still offered the same view of the city lights, stretching into the dark like stars. I sat behind the desk, ran my hand across the wood, leaned back in the chair. I'd won, but not in the way I thought I would. Not with a public takedown. Not with vengeance. I'd saved a legacy by restoring it, not burning it. And I'd done it alone. Austin had been my closest friend. A brother once. But somewhere along the way, he'd let greed twist that bond. And I had to cut him loose to save everything we'd built. That cost will never leave me. Some victories aren't clean. But this was right. Maddie knocked gently and poked her head in. "You're still here?" "Yeah," I said, glancing around. "Just settling in." She smiled. "Feels like home." I looked at her. "Not yet, but it will." She gave a soft nod and closed the door behind her. I turned back to the skyline. The office was quiet now. No shouting, no scheming, no shadows. Just me, Asher Jordan, the man who lost everything and built it back one truth at a time. Here are some questions for you, our viewers. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted in your career or business? What did you do? If you were Asher, would you have exposed Austin publicly or taken the quiet deal? Do you think legacy is more important than revenge in situations like this? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell because we have more stories coming up just for you.